So this is a class that we are calling Church Growth Class. There are 16 chapters in a little bit of book called Balance from Iowa North. We are on chapter 15. There are 22 chapters, but what we're going to do is so after this one and the next one, we're going to start pairing them up and then just kind of clear it out. So probably it'd be another 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll be done with it. Okay? But this one is all about looking out for the young people. The other one was about accepting them into the congregation. And this one's more about what do we do to help actually encourage and teach them and that kind of thing. Now, the next one is one I think of a special importance. The next lesson will be about minority rule will seal your doom. I think that's very, very important because the next one will be dealing with, just because someone has the loudest voice doesn't mean that they should be heard. And there are many, many churches that have fallen into the trap of you let really, and it could be either direction. It could be a real, liberal, loud voice saying, y'all are too conservative over here, or it could be in reverse. It could be a real legalistic guy trying to say, everyone's wrong. Everybody's at fault. And so both parties, in my opinion, are wrong because of attitudes and this kind of things, mainly. And so do we listen to those kind of individuals? Do we allow those people to kind of hold the church hostage? And I would say no. And so that's the next lesson. This lesson is all about youth again. And so we're going to look at a few things. I am definitely doing things differently than the book. So we'll just kind of go from there. Okay. Let's go from here just by way of introduction. Does anybody know any of the history around the song, All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name? Anybody have any ideas? Great. Well, sometimes we kind of think that certain songs are from those who might be more experienced. It might be, someone in their 40s and 50-year-old and over, who's seen things and experienced things. And that song is interesting because that song was written by a 19-year-old. Did y'all know that? Huh? Yes, page 300. Yeah. It was written by John E. Lohr, in 1838. He was 19 years old. There are several songs that are in fact written by young adults, by 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds that we sing often. So I find that kind of funny because, inside of our current culture, there's a real push to go toward, contemporary music, that which is written for the youth today, which is funny because those things are written by the youth of their day. And if you ever read anything inside of old books or watch old TV shows or that kind of thing, I feel like there's always been a stigma around the younger group. Every generation has always had the same stigma. They're inclined to alcoholism. They're inclined to gambling. They're inclined to dancing. They're inclined to disobedient to parents. I mean, it's everything is always the same thing for every generation about their kids. You know, our kids are going to have to grow up with this newfound invention. It's going to ruin all their families. And that might be, who knows, you know, might be something, who knows. But that's always kind of been around, is this stigma around youth. Now, inside of the Bible, though, are there positive examples of good youths? What do we think? Yes? Okay, what you got? Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, they came to the promised land after 40 years of wandering there. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about that. That's good, though. Yeah.
It depends on where you draw your line for youth.
Okay.
Now,
Where do you draw the line for youth?
well, the Bible is in different places give different examples. For example, I always grew up thinking David was a little, maybe just after his pre-teen years when he faced Goliath, when he was actually a very experienced individual.
Yeah.
He had all the qualities of a man physically. And so I would think, and also Joseph, he's called a lad or a youngster,
Yeah.
but he was 39 years old.
Okay. Okay.
And so it's very hard using the Bible as a reference to find out what a youth, a lad, is in our society.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Here's a fun question. So, if Joseph was 39 and called a lad, what about someone that's 30? Will they be a lad or would they be a man?
it depends on what the upper limit.
Well, and you lived so much longer back then that, 39, if you live to 100, 39 is
Yeah.
pretty young.
Yeah. Okay.
Another example is Isaac. He was a grown man.
Okay. He was.
And we were taught in Bible school that he was a little kid who, like a little lamb who was sacrificed by Abram.
So Jesus was 30 when he began his ministry.
He was a lad.
He was a youth.
Probably in the Hebrew society, he was probably still considered a lad, a youth.
I probably have to divert to that one, because the Bible calls him a man. He says, the man is Christ. Okay. So there are different ideas depending on the culture, which I think you're talking about. So if you were talking about more of the Greek culture, like Spartans and Athens, those kind of things, you're 40 before you attain official manhood. Okay? That's how they would do it. Because they would say that while you're in your youth, you're in the military. 40 is property ownership. That's after you've done your time in the military. Now you're able to kind of be by yourself and independent. Now you have legal standing, all kind of stuff. Whereas inside the army, you didn't. You were under the army's command. Jew, my understanding is 30. Now, Jesus, though, when he was 12, was already in the temple. Luke 2, 41 through 52 there. So when they go into the temple, that was all about obviously going into more of the process of manhood, right? That's them becoming more, and that's where they become active members of Jewish society, is 12. And there's a lot of discussion about even like Mary's age, that she may have been a teenager, when she had Jesus and that kind of thing. I mean, she may have been, you know, and there were others in the Bible that would have been leaned toward as being, you know, teens and 20s.
Look at our own society. We were in my age group, Craig and I, Horace, you know.
Yeah, Fred, put Fred in there, and I mean,
Fred.
yeah, Rodney and
Okay.
Solon.
Our generation,
Jim, put Jim in there. Okay.
our situation was considered a man at 21.
Okay.
At 21. Why 21? Because that's when we could drink. We could go to a bar and drink, but an 18-year-old could go to Vietnam, give his life. He was not a man yet.
He felt like more of a man in Vietnam than they did over here.
Well, and also in the 1800s, you became an adult at 14.
Correct. And that's when you had proper legal status.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. And that's more of my point here, is that it is interesting when you look at what we view as youth and what history would say is, I think it goes down to the dumbing down of society to some degree. You know, like when you look at, you know, certain schools, even though they were at school, and you see what their curriculum was, and they were learning, I mean, like actual philosophy classes, actual math classes, actual sciences, and doing engineering and all kind of stuff. You know, they were doing, you know, full, you know, they all spoke several languages, and they were very, very, very intellectual. And so obviously, yeah, and then also they're doing trade on the side. They're doing all kinds of stuff. So, you know, a lot of them might have been carpenters or stonemasons or builders or whatever. Also, I think today, taking away a lot of that responsibility around younger people, because we say, you know, you need to be 30 before you figure anything out, because you're not smart enough to figure it out before that. And I think that kind of takes away from what someone can do when they are younger. And I think that someone younger can be given a certain degree of responsibility and be encouraged and do things and not have to wait until the 30 to have to make all the mistakes and everything. So, okay, so we have Jesus, though, is a good example of someone who is younger. And it's of the temple in Luke 2 there. He was the one negotiating and talking with the, you know, the council. And that was part of their tradition. But also that was him. And also what was said about Jesus as a 12-year-old, what was their reaction to him?
His parents were like, what are you doing?
Yeah, he was lost and confused. They didn't know where he was. They thought he was with an uncle or cousin somewhere.
Yeah, then he said, don't you know I need to be about my father's business?
That's correct. And then the teachers, though, that were in that audience or in that council with him, they were amazed at this level of understanding that far exceeds even their own. And so they were, in a sense, shocked about it. Okay? So we also notice a few other examples. What I found is that, do we know the youngest king in Judah and Israel? Do you know how old that kid was? There are two that are young. 8, and then there's another one that was 7.
So Cubby.
Cubby, yeah. Cubby being in charge of the kingdom. Yeah. So the 7-year-old, his name was Jehoash. I probably am butchering that name. But anyways, you read about him in 2 Kings 12:1 and 2 Chronicles 24:1. And his story is that his grandmother was the queen, and she desired to fully disrupt the lineage, and she sent out murderous individuals to try to kill everyone underneath her, and he escaped, and so he was a survivor, and he got in at 7. He reigned for 40 years. The other one that we've already mentioned is just Josiah. That's where you all already mentioned that one. And he was 8. Now, it's interesting here to me that Jehoash or Joash, he was actually a good king for the most part. His whole thing was repairing the temple and keeping Judah on the right path. For the most part, he was a good king, which I found phenomenal for such a young person who's highly impressionable. Yet he had a good kingdom, it seems, by and large. And then, of course, you have Josiah. And what was Josiah's main accomplishment? Yeah. So the law was hidden away for so many years. They find it, and then he immediately says, "Go find this priest, and he's going to go out and he's going to go and read publicly the law to the people, and everyone's going to be excited to hear the law again because it's been silent for years in the land." And so he instituted that positive reform of the law being read publicly. And so that's very, very important. And then, you may think about Daniel and his 3 friends, about them being youths, Daniel 1 and 2. And so it's very important about those guys. And what's the story of Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego? What was their thing? But Daniel 1 comes in, and they're in Babylon, and they were exiles. All of them are from noble families. Okay, these aren't just some guys off the street that they just put into this spot. These were all noble families. These are all nobles from Israel. Okay, from the capturing of Israel. Now, what was the desired expectation of that group when a trumpet blew inside of the banquet hall? What had to happen? They had to kneel. They had to kneel to show honor to a pagan god and a pagan king, a pagan land, or you're in trouble. And did they? He would say no, and the Bible says no. And so, of course, Daniel, and Daniel, but he didn't do it, and he said, "I'm not going to, eat of the king's table or drink of his wine, and I'm going to be holy and pure and away from all those things." So those things are wrong and sinful, and whatever else has happened there. And so, but then y'all see, then you have the account of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego into that fiery furnace, where, of course, it says even the guards died next to it because it was so hot. And of course, we have, I think it was I know there's a lot of negotiation about this one. I lean in the direction of it not just being an angel. I think it may have been Jesus there with them as angel of the Lord. I know that's up for negotiation. I go either way, depending on who's depending on what evidence is being presented. I can see both parties. But anyway, I lean in the direction, though, of the angel of the Lord there being Christ, the pre-incarnate Christ in there with them inside of the fiery furnace. And, of course, they got out. And the Bible says that they didn't even smell like fire or soot. That's pretty phenomenal. And so, of course, they were youths. Now, for New Testament youths, of course, we've already mentioned Mary. She may have been a youth. It's interesting that with women inside of that time frame, you were allowed to be married off at 12. You were allowed to be married off, and I think I read somewhere from a historical standpoint that most girls already were pregnant when they were like 13, 14 years old. So I just find this phenomenal. What you got?
So the definition of a woman is when she's a girl becomes a woman is when she can give birth.
I didn't go down this rabbit hole. heck?
I'm a woman.
You're born a woman or a boy. You don't become. I mean, like,
No, we're not talking about gender. We're talking about age.
I think at different
He's
times
messing with me, man.
and different
he's messing with me.
cultures, it varies.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't see.
Are you talking about-
Off there on the left? A girl is a girl.
Okay.
A woman is a woman.
Okay.
It doesn't, I don't see
I don't know how we're getting here, man.
born a baby
Yes, they are.
and her gender would be female. That's my.
That's fine.
observation.
Okay.
And then when she's able or she matures to the point where she,
Maybe he's saying like when she starts her cycle.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I feel that's like, but I feel like a woman is when she begins the whole. This is very, very weird, man. This is, we're really going to a gutter. Go ahead, Horace. Save me, man. I'm going to change topics here. Go ahead.
I had this is what I heard from being around my mom and sister.
Go ahead.
Once my sisters got where they started to be able to administrate, which was have a monthly period,
Yeah. Okay.
was whereby mom would explain to them the importance of getting with the boys. I just put it like that and leave it at that. And that's where, we all get where they had that body change because of age.
they're able to have a baby.
Did you have fun with this, Rick?
So,
What you got, Rita?
We're gonna
just do this podcast. Hold it. This is going down. Okay, go ahead.
If there's a time when a lad or a boy becomes a man, why is it unimportant that if a girl, what age do they become a woman? We're talking about age here,
Yes, we are.
and
But I'm not going. Yeah,
I think that it's that simple. Who cares? I don't care.
Well, I was making this a comment that she is probably on the younger side. I was not anticipating us going into the gender role thing, mentioning married. That was not on my radar at all. That was completely over here. Okay, so I appreciate the extra insight that I didn't even think about. Okay. Anyway, we're gonna get off this. Okay. Are there any complaints about the Bible calling the lad a lad? John 5, who gave Christ his lunch. Anyone have? Okay, so that's a lad. Everyone agrees he's a boy. Yep. Great. All right. Happy for that one. Another one. There is Timothy, who was, of course. Now we don't know his age either. Speculation is he may have been 18 to 36. You can read that, and you can in commentaries, and there's a large spectrum there for his age too. But we know that one of the things around the writings to Timothy and even about Timothy, you see it in 2 Corinthians, you see it in 1 Timothy 4:12, you see it in other verses, where there's a little phrase, and Paul will say, "Let no one despise your youth." I think it said like 3 or 4 times about Timothy. So I would say, in different contexts, I would say that he's probably a youth. No one despise your youth. Okay? So all of these are good examples, okay, of individuals who were younger, and then they all did good, right? They were righteous, upstanding Christian individuals. If the New Testament, all these were positive people to look at, right? Okay. Some bad examples now. I have 2 Kings 2, 23 and 24. And this one I think is quite interesting. 2 Kings 2, 23 and 24. Can somebody read this for us? I feel like this is a bad egg. Okay, what do we think? 2 Kings 2, 23 and 24.
And he went up from thence unto Bethel, and as he was going up by the way, there came forth little children out of the city, and mocked him, and said unto him, Go up, thou bald head, go up, thou bald head. And he turned back and looked on them, and cursed them in the name of the Lord. And there came two she-bears out of the wood, and tear 42 children of them.
Would you say that those kids were being good or bad?
Bad.
Being bad. And I feel like and that's all about Elijah. That was a hymn there. And you kind of see a kind of a sense of poetic justice. They're going to make something. I'm going to send them a bear. I feel like if you're bald, you have extra protection. That is not my favorite equal. Now, when you look at, of course, this Elijah just didn't even hold back. He says, and I've always found that one kind of funny because, that shows you the power of prophet. That when he desires something to happen, it happens straight away. I feel like there's no real interval there between the sheep going after the youth and what it was like a year later. It was pretty.
Who killed the youth? The 40.
What do you think? No? Okay. What do you think? So it says the two female bells mauled 42 of the children.
Eliminated the 40.
Yeah, he's the one that authorized it. Okay.
Elisha did not.
It says that the bears did. But who's the one that told the bears to do it?
God,
Yes.
not Elisha. Elisha had nothing to do with the deaths of the 40. They were,
So, okay, go ahead.
okay, just from what I can ascertain, from what I've studied.
Yeah.
Right, those 40 youths
Mhm.
are not lads, they're not boys. They're older, like teenage boys.
Okay.
And they're like gangs of today, and our own country today is moving from letting youths get away with heinous murders. And if you
I'll get you a minute, horse.
it's just not I'm trying to say that those weren't boys like Cubby's age that were calling Elisha Baldy or whatever.
Okay.
They were not.
Well, I just think it depends on your definition of the word lad,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
I mean, where does it break down? But it's young person.
Sure.
Like I said before, a young person, when you live to 200 or 100 and something, could be 40.
Mhm.
But I don't think that's the most important part of what they're trying to teach us here.
I was just showing that these guys are bad examples of being youth. That was my whole point.
That's
Go ahead.
Use, if you want to call it use, that's fine.
Well,
This is again.
That there weren't boys.
Well, they were boys. I mean, it says that they were boys. Okay, go ahead.
The King James.
Now you're going back to gender. Okay.
No,
The King James. The little children.
it doesn't.
The King
Yeah,
James.
that's a little beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, some Bibles they put small kids, small boys.
Also, when you look at this verse 24, and see what Elijah did. It said, and he turned back and looked on them
Okay.
and cursed them in the name of the Lord.
Yep.
And then it mentioned the bear came after Elijah, cursed them in the name of the Lord. After they mocked him.
Yeah. I feel like with this situation, I feel like the answer is, what does the Bible say? And then we just let it answer for itself. You know? Okay, another bad example. I appreciate this class. Is Samuel's sons, Joel and Abijah. Now, these two guys, now this is what the people of Israel did, is they said, we cannot trust Samuel because he's getting too old. And they were kind of saying he's senile. He doesn't know, he can't make up his mind anymore, this kind of thing. It's a lot of old talk. But we can't trust your kids to take up the mantle, Joel and Abijah, because these guys are corrupt and they take bribes. So they can't be judges. And so we need a king like everybody else around us. And that's how they try to get around this whole thing being of putting in king, monarchy inside of Israel. Because they were saying that Samuel's sons were off the deep end. You know, they were immoral. They were not. And that also shows you, I think, the importance of having because you have a positive role model and a good Christian father does not mean that you're going to have good Christian kids. I think it has to be a choice that they have to make. I mean, Samuel was the one that whenever he would come into a room, you would stand up and you would stand at attention for Samuel. I mean, this guy had immense respect from north of the country down to the very south, from Dan to Beersheba. And I mean, and then his kids are just going off doing their own little thing. So you have to make a choice, won't you? But they would be bad, I would say.
Was this the same story? I don't know if it's confusing, but
Yeah, well, that's
they
right.
were getting on him because he wasn't like trying to hold them accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he pretty much just telling them, you know, that God's prophet is accountable to everybody, that kind of thing. Okay, last one I have is another youth that got into the kingdom early on was Manasseh. And have you ever heard of Manasseh? All right. Manasseh was 12 when he got into power in Judah. And do you remember what Manasseh's whole problem was? What did he do? He was evil. He was. He was one that really put the nail in the coffin for Judah. He introduced idolatry and all kind of other pagan worship artifacts and these kind of things into the area. Judah was the stronghold of faithfulness. Israel left first inside the divided kingdom after Solomon. Solomon introduced idolatry and immoral behavior. But after it divided over the death of Solomon, his son, the sons Rehoboam and Jeroboam got in there, and they divided the kingdom. And then Judah became more of the faithful. Jeroboam took the north, became more of the unfaithful. And then, of course, Israel, north, was taken into captivity and destroyed several times. And Judah was the holdout. But Judah would eventually go by the same problem as well. You know, when they began to forfeit morals and worship and propriety and the law and scripture and prayer and all those kind of things that are very, very, very important for a culture to succeed and flourish. They said, we're going to bypass all those things and go back to being like everyone else around us. Now they have corrupted everything. Okay. And so Manasseh was part of that corruption. He's one that really solidified it. Okay. So those are bad youth. You have good youth. Now here is some verses I have found around advice to youth, or just general verses I think can be applied anywhere. First one is Proverbs 1, and can somebody read these for us? Proverbs 1, verses 8 and 9. Proverbs chapter 1, verses 8 and 9. Can somebody read that for us?
My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace upon unto thy head, and chains about thy neck.
All right, thank you very much. Now, what do you see about this? So, of course, now I'm going to tell you this, an interesting side note here about Proverbs. The Hebrew word for Proverbs is the word pasha, and it means to rule. Okay? It means to rule. And it's the idea of how do you rule in your house or in your community. It's not the idea of you being lord over it. It's the idea of how do you lead appropriately, would be how I would say this. And so, Proverbs 1, 8, and 9 says that the child is to do what? Toward father and mother. Obey, respect, revere, listen to them, right? Okay. And by doing so, they will live long upon the earth. All right. Another one here is Exodus 20, verse number 12. Exodus 20, verse number 12. Can somebody read that for us?
Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God gives thee.
Okay. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land. How about that? All right. Let's look at another few here. Let's go to, well, we got 3 minutes. Let's go to Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. Somebody read that for us.
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you live long on the earth.
Okay. He's quoting, isn't he? He's quoting from Exodus 20, verse number 12. And then, of course, we've already hit on 1 Timothy 4, verse 12. This is another good one. So somebody go ahead and read this one. I'm going to do this one, then one more. Then we're going to call it a day. 1 Timothy 4, verse number 12. Can somebody read that for us?
Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of believers, word, and conversation, charity, spirit, and faith, and purity.
All right. Thank you very much. And last one is Titus 2, verse number 6. This is instruction from older to younger, but what's the problem with the younger? Titus 2, verse number 6. Someone read that for us if you got it.
Young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded.
All right. Sober-minded also means self-controlled. Exhort young men to be self-controlled. You know, I found that one to be a very nice, short, sweet, to the point. Now, each of these, when you look at each of these, of course, I think the overarching information here, of course, would be children should be listening to parents, or honoring father and mother. I think it comes down to also the parents have to do their part too. And they have to be sure that the child understands what that means. And I think you have to show it toward them to a degree too. You have to respect them as well. But so by doing so, because we know that the child learns about authority, responsibility, accountability, good, bad, mercy, fairness, all these kind of things in the home. So when the home is not fulfilled, of course, then we have a problem. When there's dysfunctionality happening, someone's not being right, you have mom against dad, you have dad going off doing things, mom doing things, or whatever that's not right, it's hard to have honor in that home. And so I think it's very important that that the home ought to be the most stable thing in any country. And I found this interesting. I found this comment when I was reading a sermon the other day. I thought it was really good. How the guy was saying, I agree with this, that the capital is not Washington, D.C. The capital for the country is inside the home. Because where the home goes, where the country goes, and where the home goes, where the community goes. So it has to begin in the home. So there has to be a lot of very positive things happening around the kids, around the adults, and everyone has to be doing what they should do. Okay, then from that standpoint, of course, there has to be instruction in the home. So that's Proverbs 1, 8, and 9. There has to be actual teaching happening in the home. Sometimes I feel that's kind of the problem we have with schools is we'll allow our child to go to school, and then we'll say, well, they're learning everything they want that they need to learn at school. And when they come home, then we just kind of put them to bed and go on. But then that goes on for years, and guess what you didn't do? You may not have taught them anything. Or it may be very minimal. Or maybe lessons that they might be counterproductive for the schools to teach them. All kind of stuff. So I think it's very important that the actual instruction in the home. And don't trust someone else to do it for you. Okay. And then, of course, I think it's dealing with the youth are to also be responsible for themselves. They have to make a choice to live faithfully, like Timothy, 1 Timothy 4:12. And then even as they go into adulthood, they have to learn self-control. I think it's also a very big thing. And how many of us would have wanted someone to take our hand when we were younger and say, you need to learn some self-control when it comes to your money or food or work or whatever. I think we all could have appreciated some balance there in some forms and fashions. And so that would be the biblical principle here I think he's trying to get across. Okay, we are 1 minute over. So next week, we're going to talk about minority rule or seal your doom. So I hope you be back in class for that one. And I will probably not be any more prepared than I was this week. So, but I mean, if you ask a far-out question, we're just going to go on the fly. Okay? So good luck. Rick? Catch me off guard, man.